Westerns have long been overlooked by the Oscars, with many classic films from the genre often getting completely ignored. So let's take a look back at 10 of the most egregious Western snubs in the history of the Academy Awards. So at number 10, we have The Outlaw Josey Wales, directed by and starring Clint Eastwood. And the film tells the story of a farmer who seeks revenge after his family is killed during the Civil War, eventually becoming an outlaw as he tries to outrun Union forces and his own personal demons. So upon its release, the film was met with widespread critical acclaim for its powerful storytelling and groundbreaking revisionist approach. Yet The Outlaw Josey Wales received just a single nomination for Best Original Score, which is surprising given that the movie features some of Eastwood's strongest work as an actor and director. Now, in fairness, the movie was going up against some strong competition that year, in the likes of Rocky, Taxi Driver, and The Omen, but even so, a single nomination really doesn't seem like enough for one of the most influential westerns of the 70s. At number 9, we have 2010's True Grit, directed by the Coen brothers. And much like the 1969 version, the movie follows a determined young girl who hires a grizzled US Marshal to track down her father's murderer, featuring career best performances from Jeff Bridges and newcomer Haley Steinfeld. So thanks to this and the Coens' typically excellent direction, the movie felt like a totally original, distinct take on a familiar Western tale, making it a massive critical and commercial success. And as a result, True Grit ended up bagging 10 nominations at the 83rd Academy Awards, making it one of the most nominated Westerns of all time, just behind Dances with Wolves, which went on to win 7. However, on the night, True Grit somehow won absolutely nothing, making it one of the most confusing and brutal Oscar snubs in recent memory. Up next, we have Red River, directed by Howard Hawks and starring John Wayne. And the film follows a grizzled rancher leading a perilous cattle drive from Texas to Kansas, which ends up coming between him and his adopted son. As such, the movie was widely praised for its gripping performances as well as Hawks' expert direction, yet the 1949 Academy Awards offered it just 2 nominations for Best Writing and Best Editing. So although Red River didn't go completely overlooked, the idea that none of its cast or Howard Hawks got any kind of recognition seems like a huge oversight, especially considering that the movie is still viewed as one of the best westerns ever made, even now over 75 years later. At number 7, we have The Wild Bunch, directed by Sam Peckinpah. Set in the early 1900s, the film follows a group of aging outlaws who are forced to confront their violent pasts while attempting one last heist. However, the 1969 Academy Awards only gave the movie 2 nominations, for Best Original Screenplay and Best Score, even though it easily should have been in contention for Best Director and Best Picture. Now, it's possible that the movie lost out due to its raw, anti-establishment themes, or maybe because the Oscars had already been unusually charitable to the Western genre that year, with multiple nominations for True Grit and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. But even so, the idea that The Wild Bunch won nothing is pretty unbelievable. At number 6, we have My Darling Clementine, directed by John Ford and starring Henry Fonda. And the movie is a dramatized version of the events leading up to the famous gunfight at the OK Corral, with Fonda delivering a measured yet commanding performance as the real-life lawman Wyatt Earp. So when it hit cinemas in 1946, it was adored by critics and audiences alike, thanks to its masterful direction, breathtaking cinematography, and the unforgettable central performance from Fonda, cementing it as one of the greatest westerns of all time. But despite this, the Academy Awards completely ignored it, and didn't offer it a single nomination, even though John Ford had won 3 Oscars for directing in the past, making it one of the most baffling western snubs of that era. At number 5, we have Rio Bravo, directed by Howard Hawks and starring John Wayne. And in the film, he plays an outnumbered Texan sheriff, trying his best to keep a dangerous prisoner in custody despite the threat of outside forces attempting to break him out. So when it released in 1959, the movie was praised for its tight storytelling, charismatic performances, and Hawke's masterful direction, establishing it as an all-time Western classic. However, despite its acclaim and enduring influence, the film was completely ignored by the Academy, receiving 0 nominations. And although there was notable competition that year from some like It Hot, Ben-Hur, and North by Northwest, it's still confusing how Rio Bravo managed to get totally shut out. At number 4, we have Tombstone, which featured an all-star cast that included Sam Elliott, Val Kilmer, and Kurt Russell. And in the movie, he plays yet another take on the real-life lawman Wyatt Earp, following his attempts to bring law and order to the violent town of Tombstone, ahead of the infamous showdown at the OK Corral. And despite having a troubled production behind the scenes, Tombstone proved to be a big hit when it released in 1993, with many praising the film for its sharp dialogue, thrilling action, and memorable performances, especially from Val Kilmer, who completely stole the show as Doc Holliday. But despite all of its critical and commercial success, Tombstone was completely snubbed by the Academy Awards, receiving no nominations whatsoever, not even for Val Kilmer. And to make matters worse, Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp managed to pick up a nomination despite flopping at the box office and receiving pretty mixed reviews. Up next, we have Once Upon a Time in the West, a spaghetti western directed by Sergio Leone and starring the likes of Henry Fonda and Charles Bronson. And the film follows an unlikely trio drawn together by a shared desire to take down a ruthless enforcer working on behalf of the railroad, featuring lots of unforgettable performances, spectacular cinematography, and a classic score composed by Ennio Morricone. So since its release in 1968, Once Upon a Time in the West has cemented itself not just as one of the best westerns of all time, but one of the greatest movies ever made. And yet the Academy Awards totally ignored it, proving to be a huge snub, especially for Henry Fonda and Ennio Morricone, who in hindsight probably should have won in their respective categories. But the Academy did eventually give the pair the credit they deserved, by awarding them both a special honorary award for their contributions to cinema. At number 2, we have The Searchers, directed by John Ford and starring John Wayne. And the movie follows a vengeful Civil War veteran as he embarks on a quest to rescue his kidnapped niece from Comanche raiders, raising questions about his motivations and morality along the way. So upon its release in 1956, The Searchers became an instant classic, due to its stunning cinematography, nuanced storytelling, and a career-best performance from John Wayne. But at the 29th Academy Awards, the movie was completely snubbed, robbing both John Ford and John Wayne of any sort of accolades, for a film that proved to be the pinnacle of both of their careers. Now, some have since argued that the film might have been too dark and morally complex for the Academy at the time, but even so, The Searchers' complete lack of recognition is still viewed as one of the biggest injustices in Oscar history. So finally, we have The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, directed by Sergio Leone and starring Clint Eastwood, Eli Wallach and Lee Van Cleef. Set during the American Civil War, this epic spaghetti western follows 3 bounty hunters in search of a hidden fortune. And much like Once Upon a Time in the West, the movie proved groundbreaking, made famous for its innovative direction, iconic score, and memorable performances from all 3 of its leads. So in short, it was a masterpiece that went on to change cinema forever. However, when it first released in the States, most American critics looked down on the movie, unable to take spaghetti westerns seriously due to their foreign quirks and bloody violence. So despite going on to become one of the most influential films of its time and arguably the best western ever made, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly was completely snubbed by the Oscars, meaning that Sergio Leone was robbed of ever winning one, not just once, but twice. So those are the biggest western snubs that I can think of, but let me know below if there are any others that you think I missed. And if you enjoyed this video, you might also want to check out this one right here.